Welcome to Deal Nation. On the show today, we're joined by Daniel McClam, the co-founder of InvestorBase and the owner-operator of Hawks Real Estate out of South Carolina. Daniel, how are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you on the show. You and I have connected a few times recently, kind of on the biz dev level for InvestorBase and Launch Control, and we were recently at a mastermind event out in Florida. It's been great connecting with you, and I wanted to really share your story with the Deal Nation audience, because I think it's great, and I really like what you and your business partner are doing over at InvestorBase. To get started, I mean, I know you have a solid, successful history in REI. What made you catch the bug? How'd you get involved in the first place?
Thinking about where to start. I mean, I'll say this. My dad was always in real estate. I think he had like 90 units when he was like 29 or 30 years old. And then I started doing build to suits for medical office buildings. So find the spot, build it, and then lease it back to the tenant, which was a build to suit. So he already knew who was going to lease it from him. So he did that for a couple of years. I just remember, I don't know, I was probably 16 and he was trying to tell me what a refinance was, which I didn't fully understand at the time, but always liked real estate. Bought some rentals with my older brothers who are also in real estate, like throughout college. So early on, man, family's been in real estate for a long time. So really got
you actually listened to your dad.
I did. He just had a good time doing it, man. I can tell. So, and I'm a numbers guy. So, enjoyed running the numbers with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wish I had listened to my dad. I grew up doing a lot of like home improvement kind of stuff with him, and it was just chores, and I didn't really take it all in. And then I tried to do something here at home the other day, and it was just an absolute disaster. And I was like, man, should have listened to dad. Should have paid attention.
Yeah, I'm not a hammer guy at all. I'm definitely a numbers guy, but yeah, from Columbia, South Carolina. Then I went to college at Charleston. Actually majored in commercial real estate finance, and then did commercial brokerage for about 3 years. So
okay,
on a team, man, I loved it. I loved commercial brokerage. We were selling and leasing warehouses, and our team was doing some serious volume. We had a really good grasp on a lot of market share with the industrial space in Charleston. So we did probably like 200 deals in the 2 or 3 years I was there. So got a ton of experience on actually representing clients on the brokerage side. So
that's an interesting space. I've got a couple of friends. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I got a couple of friends that have ownership in like warehouse spaces, and that's a lucrative business, man. Like what you can rent those things out for industrial firms there's good money in that.
Yeah, market rents in the industrial space have probably 3x'd, sometimes 4x'd in our market, and a lot of other markets in the last couple of years with the rise of e-commerce and a lot of other stuff, you name it. But
yeah, absolutely. So how did you transition from that over to Hawks Real Estate? Was it kind of a desire to own more of your time, to make more money? What got you in?
No, I mean, dude, I was, like I said, I loved what I was doing. The only reason I left is because my older brother, Andrew, he had quit his job, moved to Bali, Indonesia, was surfing for like 6-8 months and was just reading books on wholesaling. Came back and decided to try to dominate the world in the wholesale space. And he was always telling me about it. And I was like, man, I like thinking I'm better than that for a while because I'm doing commercial. He's doing something called residential wholesaling. And I was like, what is that, man? So finally, like the year 2021 hit, and like Andrew had basically reversed his business to where he was solely a dispo business. So doing JV nationwide wholesaling, but he had transaction coordination in-house as well. So he was doing dispo and TC for probably about 150 wholesalers nationwide.
Whoa.
And his main value prop was that he had relationships with hedge funds that truly no one else had. So he had about 15 different preferred hedge funds across the entire
15.
United States.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and a lot of those hedge funds would not work with a one-off wholesaler. right? But since Andrew was able to produce volume in like a streamlined system, they were willing to work with him. So a lot of people wanted that 120% of ARV offer on their house, right? So you kind of had to go through Andrew to a degree to get access to those offers. And obviously that was a crazy time period, right? But for me, he just really started calling me a lot more, and I just started to look at the numbers that he was actually doing, and I was like, this is absolutely insane. So decided to try to ride the wave. I already have my brokerage license, so spun up a brokerage and jumped in, man. Yeah, so that was probably mid 2021 when I jumped in.
Okay, yeah. So you made a fairly quick, jump and a leap over into the software side, because if you were doing commercial, you're running Hawk as of 2021, and we're barely into 2025 now. So as you kind of got into that space your brother was in, and you started obviously making some real money and doing well, why not just stick there? Like, what got you intrigued in creating something like InvestorBase? And maybe for everybody listening in, if they're not familiar with the brand, just give like a short description of what InvestorBase is, so they know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I'll do that first. So InvestorBase is a disposition software for wholesalers. So we give you access to an estimated 10 million buyers nationwide with phone numbers attached to those buyers. So the skip tracing is free. But what we do really good at InvestorBase is we identify the most likely buyers for your deal, right? So it's one click of a button, and you have a list of buyers for your specific deal ranked from most likely to buy your deal at the top to least likely to buy your deal at the bottom. We launched about a year ago, had our 1 year anniversary about 10 days ago on April 1st. So that was exciting. And we've just grown a ton today. It's been awesome. It's been probably the most fun year I've had in business in my life. It's been freaking awesome. But to answer your question, when I started wholesaling, I already kind of had the real estate aptitude, right? We were working on a lot more complex transactions than, the wholesale, the nature of a wholesale transaction, right? So that part was easy, right? But building the actual business is something it's hard sometimes, right? And like when you go to scale, a lot of your SOPs will break as you grow, things will break, and you have to reoptimize and recreate. And, sometimes to really get to where you want to be, it's like, you got to trial and error, right? So like, for us, we scaled really quickly. I got my first deal under contract on day one with my first lead. I got under contract and assigned it for 10K. I'm not even kidding. It wasn't even a lead. Actually, I hadn't even got a lead from my cold call yet. It was a for sale by owner that had been on Zillow for 10 minutes. And I thought it'd be a fun exercise, like as a joke, and ended up actually getting under contract and assigning it to a hedge fund. But just starting off quick, man. And so I remember like month 6, I had 13 closings by myself. And it was a really big month. And so I decided to scale it, right? And so by the end of the year, we were probably in 10 different markets, working with probably about 4 hedge funds consistently, and 4 acquisition managers in-house, 20 cold callers overseas. We had an office on King Street downtown. Like we scaled very quickly. And when you do that, things can break. But what kind of, whatever the saying is, what broke the straw on the camel's back, or whatever you say, is we were so over leveraged into the hedge funds, right? So at the end of 2022, anybody listening to this remembers when rates went up. And we had done about 150 deals, and we had never sold a single one to a local flipper or landlord. Every single one of them went to an institutional buyer.
Yeah.
And we got smoked, honestly, like we did. We got some phone calls, and it was basically terminated half our deals. And it was a hard time for me and my acquisition guys, So we immediately had to try and figure out how we were going to find buyers for these deals, right? So
Yeah.
the origin of InvestorBase really spawns from a problem that we had in our business, and then realized a lot of other people out there had the same issue, right? So I won't get into exactly what we did to survive, but ultimately we created InvestorBase for ourselves, and it started working really well. So we, shared it with our friends and other wholesale colleagues, and they were like, "Dude, you guys got to do something with this." And so it's funny how business works,
Yeah, I mean, it's really like I love the mindset that you guys took to this, because the golden goose is, or at least was, hedge funds, because the margins that they would buy at, and the kind of the turnkey volume that you could process through them was, a game changer for anybody that had those relationships. I know a couple of investors in different markets around the country who, even if it was one or two hedge funds, just had really close relationships with them during that time period, and they did wild volume through them because they didn't need the 30-40% margins. They were able to shrink that down. So the volume that they pushed through was crazy. But what I love that you guys took that institutional buyer mindset and basically said, how do we create almost an institutional buyer functionality out of this much larger ecosystem of buyers nationwide, and make it almost as turnkey, or as turnkey as working with these hedge fund institutional buyers. That's an interesting kind of mental approach that you guys took to this.
That's sharp. You're making that point, Michael, because I think that the methodology of how InvestorBase works is similar to what you just said, right? Like historically for Hawks Real Estate, we were pinpointing exactly who was paying the most, right? And then we would reverse engineer what they wanted, right? And then we'd go market to exactly what they wanted. So the entire process was reverse engineered based on who is going to pay the most, right? So with Smart Match AI, with InvestorBase, it works the same, right? It's like price point is a huge consideration in who's most likely to buy your deal, but also that creates it to where who's most likely to pay more, right? So that's a heavily weighted component of our Smart Match algorithm that we have a lot of case studies that I won't get into of, like, people are marketing it for a month and they come in, they call a couple buyers in InvestorBase, and then somebody comes in 10 or 20K higher, like on day one, It really does allow you to prioritize who you should be calling for your deal, who you should be getting a hold of, right? So I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's the same way that we ran our business.
Well, I do a bit of investing myself now, but I came into this business, into REI, from a sales and marketing perspective. Working for a software company, building launch control sales and marketing team up. And so I came into it with not a real estate lens, but really kind of an outside looking in sales and marketing kind of lens. And one of the biggest gaps that I've always seen in this industry is in the whole distressed property market, right? You've basically got these two big groups of investors. You have the wholesalers and just distressed property kind of middlemen, really, right? That are out there sourcing and finding the deals. And then you have the buyers, which are, fix and flippers, contractors, and sometimes hedge funds. And those two major groups, even though they are transacting the same properties, rarely talk to each other. They talk to each other in the moment, but they don't have those kind of relationships that your brother had with the hedge funds. They don't have those kind of relationships that you guys are now facilitating through an InvestorBase. And I see that as still a really, really untapped opportunity. I'll tell you, this is a true story. I got this came across my desk yesterday. Found out that there are some, through one of the big dispo companies that we work with, they work with a lot of end buyers. They work with a lot of fix and flippers and contractors, and they've got like a good number of those people that they work with that are not only working with wholesalers directly, but they are paying for their launch controls subscription because they want those wholesalers to go out and consistently find them deals so that they don't have to do the hustle work, so that they can just analyze deals, choose what they want to spend on, know full well they're paying the commission and be fine with it, so that they can have a steady stream of projects to work on. Because in most cases, unlike you and me, they probably are hammer people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't want to deal with the other side of it. They want to get their hands dirty, fix the thing up, flip it, and make some money. So like the idea that they're willing to pay for a launch control subscription to facilitate somebody being a finder for them is I think a huge indicator of the opportunity that InvestorBase is creating.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought too. I remember we did think about that at one point. Like, hey, we got 4 acquisition guys in house, and we're only sourcing for this one hedge fund, they should pay for our marketing. Like we actually thought about that. Like, dude, we're doing all this work and we're not even shopping it to anybody else, man. Like, you guys get a little bit more involved. But yeah, I would agree, man. And I think the reason why there is kind of a detachment between wholesaler and buyer, especially nowadays, is because, we've transitioned from a smoking hot, like, seller's market to we're kind of getting towards a buyer's market. So, like, we're not there yet. I think we're actually in, like, kind of a healthy, normalized environment right now, but it's different than what it was. So, like, for instance, you can't write a letter into the wind anymore and then have 15 offers on your doorstep, right? But we've onboarded over 1,000 wholesale companies in the last 12 months. And what I can tell you is that a lot of people's dispo process hasn't changed since 2021. They still sit back, they send an email blast to their list, or they send a text blast, and they wait for the offers to come in, right? Yeah. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just in a time, especially right now, like, of some pretty crazy volatility, whether it's in the stock market, tariffs, the actual real estate market turning to buyer's market, is, buyer engagement has continued to just kind of go down a little bit with blasts, right? And what we've kind of lost is a lot of the relational based selling that you're referring to, that we hardcore believe in. Like, we build our whole business off having great great relationships with great buyers. You know what I mean? And when you find the right buyers who are willing to pay more, the guys who their 2025 goal is to do 150 flips, and their willingness to make a margin on a flip is only 10, 15, 20K. When you find that guy, you need to send that guy a Christmas gift. Like, right? You need to find out what his kids' names are. You need to find out what his favorite football team is. Like, you need to be best friends with that dude. So you can do that pretty easily within. So at InvestorBase, just to not to cut you off, Michael, but we do all the legwork to find that person for you. Not only that, but we give you their phone number, and you can actually store them to your buyers list within InvestorBase. So all you have to do is pick up the phone and bring them into your world. And I think it's an applicable time now with just all the noise that's out there between the good wholesalers and the bad wholesalers, and the good deals and the bad deals, and the tens of thousands of emails that these buyers are getting in their inbox with deals. It's like, it's really hard to separate what's good and what's bad, So we kind of just try and cut through the BS at InvestorBase.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a partnership, right? Like, something that I've always told my sales teams over the years, it is everything is a problem solution dynamic. And these buyers, whether they're hedge funds or a fix and flipper that's doing 2-3 projects a year, they have a very specific buy box, and their problem is finding properties that fit that very specific buy box. So in the next 60 to 90 days, what specifically are they looking to buy? And if you can identify that problem, you can solve that problem, right? Instead of what is like a sales mistake 101 is, like, let's say I meet with you, an InvestorBase, as a representative of Launch Control, and I go, "Hey, Daniel, nice to meet you. Let me show you the app." And I just start running through the app with no conversation about your business, what challenges you're trying to solve, how you work with your customer base, none of that. I'm just like, look at this thing that I got, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the equivalent of blast contacting your buyers and just being like, hey, look at this thing that I got. Want to see more? That you're never, ever going to get the returns off of that than you're going to get from solving a specific problem for a specific buyer, right? And InvestorBase is giving you the ability to really narrow down your strategy on the front end, right? So if you look at like partnership, and I'll kick it back to you, but if you look at just the way that Launch Control and InvestorBase work together, and like Launch Control filters down a bunch of names on a data sheet down to the people that are willing to have a conversation with you, right? So now you can go, as an investor, you can go into discovery. And what's a challenge for us, and a reason why we partner with InvestorBase, is because if people in that sales conversion funnel, if they're unable to take a deal and then get it dispoed and sold quickly, it erodes what they perceive as the efficiency of Launch Control, right? Because they didn't make enough money, they didn't make enough money quickly. But if we can set up a system where they're getting consistent leads through us and then working with InvestorBase and they're dispoing and turning those deals over really fast because they have a very mature buyer's market that they've set up through you guys, the success rate of their business as a whole goes up and their perception of the success of Launch Control goes up. So it's really important that we work with people like you in order to help tweak and fix their business. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think the problem everyone's trying to solve is probably we need to close more deals, right? So we don't do what y'all do, right? Y'all don't do what we do, but together we can definitely help our client achieve that goal in particular. Shout out Launch Control. We had Launch Control for a while when we were doing texting. I remember we closed like a 12,000 deal in the first month, and I was like, man, we just paid for this for like the next oblivion, you know? And so that is the main driver component of, you know, hey, is this going to work for me or not? Is that not necessarily leads coming in, but hey, money in the door, right? So I would say just to comment on what you mentioned a minute ago real quick, just with the buy box stuff, something that surprised me last year is I started hearing from more wholesalers when I'm discussing prospecting for new buyers that people's buyers list that they've had for forever were not growing anymore, but there was buyers list attrition going on throughout 2024, 2025, where people were opting out more than they were adding people to their list, which I think historically has been the opposite. So the main reason for that was people were tired of getting deals sent to them that were not in their buy box and that they didn't want, right? So imagine like you've sent me 1,000 deals and not one of them is one that I want, or not one of them is one that I told you that they want when you took 10 minutes to find out my buy box, right? Like I'm gonna leave. Like I'm gonna get off that list. So of course, something that's cool about buyers list and an InvestorBase is when you add a buyer within InvestorBase, we will programmatically update their buy box for you based on their transaction history, right? So when you add Michael,
Bartolome. Yeah.
Bartolome with
substitute teacher's worst nightmare.
With like Flipside LLC or whatever your LLC name is, like when you press add to buyers list in InvestorBase, we're going to pull in every single zip code, county, state that you've bought in that we have record of, right? So we'll pull in 9 different zip codes for you, and you don't even have to do that, plus your verified information, right? So it's super powerful, especially if you have a list of 10,000 people and you want to clean that up. You can import it in and clean it up for you.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So I think that's a good example of a gap, right? So, not naming names, there are a couple of other dispo platforms out there. And obviously, you guys did your SWOT analysis going in. So what were some of the gaps that you were really looking to fill when you started InvestorBase as far as dispo services and platforms available?
Man, we didn't really look at competition as much as people often think. Like being completely honest with you, price point, when we went to market, we wanted to be competitive, but at the same time, we just thought of ourselves like we thought of the problem that we were trying to solve for our own business. And continuously, when we had a problem, other people had the same problem. So all we're doing is just solving problem after problem, right? We don't care. We don't really look at competition as much as people think. I'm aware of the other guys out there. I think that, our real edge is that we provide real buyers based on real transactions. So for anybody listening, we're not a marketplace model. So you can't opt in to be a buyer of InvestorBase. You can't raise your hand and say, oh, me, send me your deal. My name's Michael. I'm really a buyer, I swear. When in reality, you might be a wholesaler or a daisy chainer or a realtor trying to find a buyer for you, or a freaking, you know what? So that is a real differentiator of us, is like, we do a great job of identifying flips and buying whole transactions, attaching the real buyer to it, and giving you all the information for a pretty good deal. I would like to think is what it pans out to be.
Yeah, no, okay. So I think that's super invaluable information to have, and sort of playing off of what we were saying of creating these more mature relationships with your end buyers, and really being able to kind of strategize based off of what's gonna sell in the next 60 to 90 days. Even if you're looking a little bit more macro in terms of what you see in InvestorBase, kind of targeting your strategy towards that. I'm curious to see how users at different stages engage with InvestorBase. So I'll give you two examples of what will go on the extremes. Example number one, somebody just wants to run a lifestyle business. So, they're looking to make, let's say, a good lifestyle, but they're looking to make, say, 300K to 500K over the course of the year, and have lots of time, lots of free time, versus somebody who wants to do kind of what you and your brother did with Hawks, and have a team abroad, have a team in-house, maybe have an office, running a big shop, and doing very, very high volume. So what are some of the differences in the way that each of those kind of business profiles engages with InvestorBase?
When you think about scale, I usually think about team size, right? Not, look, if you can run a lifestyle business and wholesaling and be a one-man show, and it's a lifestyle business and you're comfy, healthy, happy, I want to know exactly what you're doing, because, wholesaling is not the easiest game in the world. It really isn't. So I would say there's that kind of lifestyle business and wholesaling, not at scale, is a little bit fewer and farther between. What we find more is, the one-man show or the two-man team is usually grinding pretty hard.
Yeah.
Right. So for a one-man show, like that avatar type person, or a beginner, someone who's never done a deal, we often find that they are really leaning into the analytics that we provide within InvestorBase. So, we say we're a disposition software, but something, which we are, but something we didn't really realize that out of our X amount of users, that a lot of them were actually leaning into is the price that buyers actually paid for a deal around them, right? And so what we've built it's called investor comps, that I think all of our users use on a daily basis. Is you don't have to be under contract on a deal in order to use InvestorBase. Okay, a lot of people run their leads through InvestorBase in order to see exactly what buyers are paying around them. So we're not producing ARV. We're producing a price that an investor will likely pay for the house based on like-kind deals they've done, right? So let's say you run your subject property. It's a lead. It can be any stage in the transaction cycle up to under contract. You can be negotiating with the seller. It could have just come in. Seller could be at their rock bottom, and now you want to see, hey, what buyers paid more than $100,000? I know the seller won't go any lower, right? There are a lot of implementations for identifying what buyers are paying and sniping the buyers who are paying the most, right? So there's full reverse wholesale functionality that comes out of that you can do with InvestorBase. So I see a lot of the people who might not be closing that many deals, but have a lot of leads and want to create more deals using InvestorBase in that capacity, right?
I would love to see. We should come back to this, like, I don't know, 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever. And I would love to see people that are, getting started. Let's say somebody gets started with InvestorBase today, right now, right? And to like run analysis on the deals that they did in 2024 and what they profited off of those deals. So let's say they did 30 deals over the course of the year in their current market. What did they earn off of those deals? And then doing a side-by-side comparison with 2025 through InvestorBase, equal number of deals, 30 deals, how much did they profit? It'll probably, by efficiency, probably be a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? If your business makes an extra $200,000 to $500,000 just based off of efficiency, just knowing more accurately what people are going to pay with no additional marketing spend, no additional overhead spend, that's wild. That's a crazy difference in your business. So yeah, we should loop back and talk about that, because I think the stats will probably bear that out.
I think so. A lot of people, including us, guilty as charged for just picking up the phone and calling, 1 or 2 buyers, right?
Yeah.
You're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot when you do that. Also, just not having all the analytics that we provide in front of you to make sure to target the buyer that, hey, maybe you shouldn't call the guy that paid $50K for that deal right beside you. You should call the guy that paid $100K, 80% of ARV. You should call that guy first, right? And prioritize getting him on the hook. It'd be an interesting analysis to see how much money you left on the table at the end of the year.
Yeah,
without it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things I've told you and your business partner about this, but one of the things I always suggest that people do for launch control, and this is obviously before you and I started talking about InvestorBase and kind of the data that you guys have out there, but kind of looping back to you said about like the blast mentality with buyers. Our advice to people and using the platform was always, send that list of buyers a text message, get them to opt in to a text thread. Basically say, look, I can push up to 2 to 3 potential deals to you every month. I just need to know what you're looking to buy in the next 60 to 90. And when they agree to that, you give them a call, whatever, you get a few more details about their buy box, right? Specifically what they're looking to buy short term. And then you use that to inform your strategy. And you go out and you find exactly what they're looking for, so that, they're going to pay premium if you're delivering exactly what they're looking for, like, and I know that sometimes, talking to data providers kind of bring things full circle. Like talking to data providers, I think it was Deal Machine. Yeah, it was Deal Machine. I was talking to them, and they said that like they had one of their clients was doing really, really well when they filtered down to, I think it was like 2-bedroom, 2-bath properties with AC in window AC units. It was like hyper specific. And the reason that the obvious reason that they had tons of luck selling those properties was because there was a demand for that very specific property profile in their market, right? Mm-hmm. So, using InvestorBase, making, like you said, even using your leads to find out what people are buying and how much you're paying for it, then that can increase efficiency on the front end through launch control exponentially by just, exactly what they're going to buy. So go out and find that. Like, I think that's an interesting strategy that currently not a ton of wholesalers are actually implementing.
I think that's a great idea too. Like we reverse engineered everything. So for us, it was, hey, we're the list we would target, because we were working with 1 or 2 buyers, was 3-2, like 1,000 to 2,000 square feet, 1980 building up, sometimes less than 2015, right? Because they always like less than 2012 even, they always hadn't replaced the roof yet, right? So we started marketing under that, because it was like every single one is 10 plus years old. We can't have that. So I mean, even that specific, 1-car garage, not adjacent to commercial, no HOA, Dude, we got no septic well, not on a 3-lane road. Like, we got dialed in on exactly what these guys wanted, and gives you a higher percent chance to work leads that are going to have the ability to be sold, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. And when you find those buyers, being able to, I think it's a great strategy to have a text opt-in mechanism, which me and you will work on that, Michael. I know we're already jamming on some stuff, dude. We're gonna get that going for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that for sure. And I love what you just said. Like, that level of detail is, I think we also at Launch Control, we work with quite a few land wholesalers, land flippers, and they all have very specific filtering that they go through. It can't have slope. It has to have road access. It can have a water feature, but it can't be wetlands or flood zones. And like, there's all this stuff that just gets immediately knocked out so they can look at what's left, and in wholesaling, it's usually pinned to motivation or financial distress, right? So is it in pre-foreclosure or does it have tax liens, so money worries? Is it a out-of-state owner? Is it probate? So there's like 3 or 4 like big groups in wholesaling of just distressed motivators, but you don't see as often people doing property specific filtering to narrow it down even more. Like nothing older than 2012. Some of I'm not going to regurgitate everything you just said, but some of those filters that you just mentioned, like putting those into place, I mean, it narrows it down to the most winnable set of data. The most winnable set of data is the most winnable set of conversations. The most winnable set of conversations is the most turnkey set of deals. Like, it's a pretty good interconnected system.
Yeah, the only problem you run into is limited amounts of data, especially if you're trying to target distress. That's where you'll have to be in more than one market to have enough data to be able to market to, or you have to have more than one channel hitting that list, right? Whether it's direct mail, cold call, text, right? Like, you have to have more than one channel hitting that list in order to produce results. But at the end of the day, that specific strategy of that dialed down approach, I think that really that should probably only be used if you have a buyer who's willing to pay more for that specific type of property, right? And so for us, it made sense. Like, we didn't even market to distress ever, not once, ever. We marketed to retail based on just property type, because we were able to offer 100% of ARV minus repairs.
Of course, yeah.
Like, we could just tell the seller literally, hey, we are going to offer you literally the same exact amount as if you made the repairs yourself, paid an agent, paid your closing costs. Like, that's it, because we have partners that are willing to pay that, right? And so that specific strategy can work, especially with InvestorBase, if you identify those buyers, but it almost becomes a null and void strategy, because regardless of what you're marketing to, we're going to produce a buyer for that deal, right? Like, in your most likely buyers. So it can be rural, right? It can be land. It could be a mobile home. It could be on the complete other side of the country. It doesn't matter, because we're nationwide. And wherever you run a search, whatever the deal is, we're going to produce a niche buyers list for you, right? So it depends on what your strategy is right there. I hope that makes
No, it does. It does. I think that's really insightful. And the 80-20 rule kind of comes up a lot, right? Like and I think that you can take an 80-20 approach to a lot of what you do in real estate. So, taking a wider approach for 80 and taking a narrower approach for 20, you don't have to pick a lane. One lane might be wider than the other, but you don't necessarily have to pick a lane.
Yeah, I would recommend that too, so you don't shoot yourself in the foot like we did with too much leverage in one spot.
Right. Like, that business model, for as long as you can run it, is an ideal business model, but it is, you are leveraged to one big client, 2 big clients, which is dangerous for any business anywhere,
Right. For sure.
So in terms of like when somebody comes into Launch Control as a new subscriber, there are certain things that like I'd love to be able to wave a magic wand and make sure that everybody knew coming in, because it would make just their success rate higher, and it would make my my team's process of getting them fully adopted easier. Are there certain things that you guys have seen a year or so in where you'd love to wave a magic wand and have people know certain things coming in?
Yeah, there's a handful, and I'll say this to preface it. InvestorBase is an extremely intuitive, very easy to use, like great user experience, great user interface, like very, very user friendly software. Some common misconceptions though are people assume that it's just a cash buyers list that we're pulling, but it's not. It is not a cash buyers list. Okay, in no way, shape, or form. There's a lot more granular details to the data that we go through on a scrubbing side to really make that list that you get real buyers based on real transactions. Okay, so there's a pretty serious property data piece that goes into producing what we produce. It's not just based on a cash transaction. When you do a cash transaction, there's a lot of slippage, right? So there's that for one. Two, a lot of people think you have to pay for skip tracing in the software. Like they just can't believe that, like they're expecting an add-on. Our pricing is core. There's no plus more. There's no, it's very simple. So the skip tracing is included. We just launched a new listings feature that allows you to create a listing for your deal. Common misconception, it's not a marketplace, right? This is for you to expedite getting the details of your deal to your buyer, right? So, which a lot more people realize that. We also just launched it like 2 weeks ago. So obviously there's a learning curve that's in place when we're launching features as fast as we do at InvestorBase. But yeah, generally speaking, if you're listening to this and you want to try InvestorBase, lean into Smart Match. Like we're taking out so much legwork for you just by running a search. So yeah, I would say those are the main things.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I mean, in both cases, or in every case, you're saving time and money, right? To not have to go to a third party service to skip trace saves time. To not have to go to a third party service to skip trace saves money. Like you can really much more easily pin down your overhead with the cost structure you guys have. We do the same thing at launch. A lot of like some of the competitors charge per message after a certain level, or per text after a certain level, and that it's very hard to predict your overall cost structure when you do that. So we pin it to a specific monthly cost. You have volume limits, but as long as you're within those volume limits, like it's going to cost what it costs for your subscription level. And I think that's and obviously you agree, I think that's the way to go, because when you're running a real estate business and you want to keep your budgeting pretty tight in terms of what it's going to cost you to achieve a certain amount of ROI, you don't want unpredictability, right? And you don't want billing through 8 different places. You want to keep it as tight as you can. So it's not only efficient, it really tightens things up for people, makes it easier.
Agree, 100%.
So outside of well, just a little bit outside of InvestorBase, in terms of what you see kind of coming down the pipe for the investing REI and industry in general, say like the next 3 to 5, when you guys are doing real estate out of South Carolina, there have been some shifts in state in terms of wholesaling. Where do you see the tides kind of going moving forward?
Yeah. I have light opinions on the market in general. I think we'll slowly see maybe continuing to transition to a buyer's market, right? Which
Mhm.
might require, more effort to sell deals than what we're used to. So that's something to be aware of. I mean, we've already seen that over the last 18 months, right? People have already felt a little bit of a squeeze on the dispo front. So I expect to probably continue that. As far as wholesaling concerned, yeah, we're in South Carolina. We have probably the strictest, most strict legislation on wholesaling out of all 50 states. Um, it's been successful here as far as what they're trying to accomplish, and I think it's a good thing. Probably is protecting the seller. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people who are doing bad things, but what it's turning to is people are adopting an installment method. So with one strategy out the door comes a new strategy and behind it, and this
Yeah.
is approved and legal. So I see that taking precedent here in South Carolina. If other states do adopt similar legislation, which I believe they will over the next 3 to 5 years, that's one way you can get ahead of that, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll actually do contract for deed and be on title prior to marketing it or whatever you want to do. So I think that's definitely something to look into if you haven't already. What is the installment method, right?
Mhm.
Similar to you hearing about what is innovation over the last 5 years, and then you finally decide to pick it up and you realize it's a great strategy, right?
Yeah.
Installment method, there is a lot of power to it. And if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us. I can connect you with some people who really, really understand it in South Carolina.
No, that's great. But we'll talk after the show, but maybe we can even do kind of a workshop on that. I think that would be something that would be useful for the audience, because different exit strategies is going to be important. I look at it. I look at what happened in South Carolina in terms of regulating wholesaling as a whole, as a business operation, and then on the text communication side, some of what gets classified as regulation changes is really actually just carrier best practices that are being filtered and kind of honed. The common denominator really is that there's a greater awareness of wholesaling as an industry, as a business, than there ever was before. It used to be, 2008 to the pandemic, it was very kind of wild west, and a handful of Robert Kiyosaki fanatics out there, like running these businesses and running and gunning, and it wasn't known, right? And I think more and more it's as is shown by tightening up from the carriers, by tightening up by certain state legislators. There's just more of an awareness of the business as an industry, and as such, I think that it's not a big deal, but there's just going to have to be kind of a maturation process where people do have additional exit strategies that they can employ, and you do have maybe more of a focus on generating inbound leads and having people come to you. Because the other common denominator, and I think you'd agree, you can tell me, but distressed properties aren't going to go away. People aren't going to stop having money issues. People are not going to stop having ex properties that they want to let go of. There's always going to be this subgroup of distressed properties that just don't fit the MLS model. So kind of what I said earlier, there's a problem solution dynamic that's going to remain a problem. So the solution might just have to change a little.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with you 100%.
So last thing, I know that we've talked about InvestorBase quite a bit. Obviously, anybody listening can tell that you're very knowledgeable in general about real estate investment, and especially in that relationship between wholesalers and the end buyers. People want to get in touch with your team to get started with InvestorBase, or even just to kind of touch base on something like the installment method. What's the best route?
Yeah, for sure. So we make it pretty easy for you to come into the InvestorBase ecosystem, I'd say. We have a 14-day free trial. So if you want to sign up with us, you simply go to our website, InvestorBase.com/free trial /ref equals launch control. You like how I had that by heart?
I cannot believe you just said that.
Yeah. I've said it once or twice, so a little bit of practice there. But yeah, if you go to InvestorBase.com, you can sign up for a free trial. You can also book a demo with us, right? So that is a one-on-one call with one of our account specialists at InvestorBase, where we actually want to solve your problems, right? Like we want to know how many markets you're in, what your current dispo process is, what's your team size, what are some of the bottlenecks currently in your business, and we really dive deep to show you what some best practices are with dispo, regardless of if you use InvestorBase or not. Honestly, we're here to help, and hopefully you come back in the future, right? But that is a great opportunity. That's free. It's about 30 minutes. So you can opt into that solely by just going to the website and booking a time with us, right? We're happy to do that all day. If you want to sign up and go active and get full access, you can get $100 off that first month just by using the launch control code. And if you're a launch control user, be on the lookout for some new stuff coming out with us and them. We're going to have some really cool things on the horizon. So definitely we'll make it more powerful if you are a launch control user as well, I'd say, if that's fair to say, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in the works for sure. Cool. All right. Well, so for everyone listening, as always, everything that Daniel just said, including that URL that he was able to say off the top of his head, is included in the episode description below. So go down there, click either book your 14-day trial or the demo or both. Get involved with them, and then we talked a lot in this episode about turnkey solutions and making your business as easy as possible. The combination of launch control, and especially launch control with our done for you service, launch leads, paired with InvestorBase on the back end, shrinks your business down to really just having seller conversations and getting those sellers under contract and dispoed very, very quickly through InvestorBase. So in terms of like the fastest possible route to a deal, that combination of launch control and InvestorBase can be incredibly powerful. So we'll also include a link to launch control below. Make sure you ask our team about launch leads, and we'll help you put that front and back end package together with Daniel and his team. All right. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation. And yeah, like I said, mid-show, we'll bring you back on down the line and talk about, how much more profit people are making just by having the right buyers for the deals that they're sourcing through you guys.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it, seriously. And appreciate you having me on. Always a pleasure to be here. I've been a user of y'all for forever. So this is like kind of full circle for me, which is super cool. So yeah, appreciate you having me on.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. See you next Thursday for the next episode of Deal Nation. And, thanks for listening in. All right. Bye everyone.